This morning we're interviewing Mr. Andrew Powell in the Burgess Pavilion, part of the DeLand Memorial Hospital Veterans Museum. This is an interview for the West Volusia Historical Society. The day is May 16th, 2022, and I'm Kathy Hirsch. How long have you lived in West Volusia?
I've lived here. I was born and raised here. I lived 21 years here, and I left I was drafted. I got my Uncle Sam, dear Uncle Sam letter in '68, and after that I left DeLand in '69. So I lived here a total of 21 years, and back, so it's 31 and 42, and so that'll be 42 years away. So that's my tenure.
But you came home.
I came home. I retired. After I retired out of the fire department after 30 years, I came back home, and I just had the feeling to come back home, and I'm glad I did.
Where were you born, and where did you live as a child? Were you born in a hospital?
I was born here in DeLand at 534 West Hubbard, and I was born in the house. All of us, 6 of us, we were all born in the house. Midwife attended us. So during those days, it was the mid-40s. So that's where I was born, and all of it. I think my dad was born there too. Yeah, it was a family home, really. It was a pretty good. It was a big house. It was a big house, and it had 10 feet ceilings. So it was a big house, and I think all my uncles and things, they built it years ago. Probably in the early 1900s and late 18.
So your dad was from DeLand as well?
Dad's from DeLand, and my family goes back over 120, some 30 years. Well, we can't trace anyone, so my dad's side is from here, and we can't trace anywhere but here in this area, for far as I know.
And you said that your father's mother, your grandmother, was part Cherokee.
No, my mom's mother was almost full Cherokee. When you look at her, you would see she had the typical features, and most people, you go online, you see a typical Indian Cherokee. Indians, just basic Indians, they're my complexion. And then she had long braids to come down to, and my mom had the same thing. And they had the features. My grandmother had more facial features of the typical Cherokee Indian than my mom did.
Did your mom come from DeLand as well, or somewhere else?
My mom was born in White Springs, Florida, and after she was born, my grandmother, they moved down to Pierson. So she lived and was raised up in Pierson, Florida, and that's where she was raised up at. And then all my mom's family is pretty well in the Pierson area.
What is the origin of your first name?
Origin of my first name goes back to biblical. It's a biblical name. It's Andrew was one of Jesus' disciples. So that was, and then the next it would go back to my dad, and my dad was Andrew. He was a senior, and then my son there's a third. He don't like to be called Andy III, but that's what we usually call him, Andy III. And so my siblings call him Andy III. Yes.
And he doesn't like to be called that?
No, he doesn't recognize it readily as being a third, but he is a third.
What were you called as a child?
I was called Andy, and most I was called Andy. And it was and then in school, it was Andrew, but my sibling, everybody else would call me Andrew. And then
what was your birth order?
My birth order? Mm-hmm. Okay.
You have 6 brothers? 5 brothers.
Okay, it's 6 of us. I'm the oldest of 6, and it's 3 girls and 3 boys, and one of the boys just passed just recently, and so it's 5 of us right now, 2 boys and 3 girls.
What was life like growing up in a large family here?
Well, it was good, but it was hard. We didn't have the things that other people have, even in our era. because my dad passed away when we were young. My dad passed away in his late 30s, something like that, and with that many kids. My mom was a housewife. She didn't work because she was raising us. And so my dad worked all the time. He had to work, and he worked with the railroad department. He worked for the railroad for about 16, 17 years. And then he worked for Conrad Lumber Company. I think it was here in DeLand. He drove trucks for them. He worked for the lumber company in the day, and he worked for the railroad at night, loading the trains up.
So he had 2 jobs.
Yeah, two jobs, full-time jobs.
And how old were you when he died?
I was about 14, 15 years old. My dad died. So that was hard on us because we just didn't have what others had, because, and then we had to pull in the older ones to help out, and it's good that we finished school, not like some, because my dad was young. He had to come out of school early, I guess, to do the same thing, support your family and things like that.
So, being the eldest, you were kind of the man of the house then.
Yes, I was at that time, because after I got out of school and I went to work, I worked for Cherokee Medical Center. It was a medical supply place where we made hypodermic needles for. And during that time, we were, the needles were manufactured here, and a lot of packages were sent off to Vietnam during that time. That was the era. Yeah, but I worked there and helped support
Did you work during high school?
We worked during high school. In the summertime, we worked, and I did my own little thing. I was like a little, let you say, a handyman, handy boy, and coming up, because I worked in the community doing little fixer-upper, for the elderly and different people who couldn't. One lady I worked for was Branham, Miss Branham. She was a lot of people may know, was a nurse and a doctor here, and Carabelle, she was the nurse that was here, and so I worked for her mom, and that's why I started working. I was in high school, and I would come and do little things, chores for her, and that's how I started, Powell Enterprises. So I worked after school, and then we worked. Our agriculture teacher, he would get assignments for us during the summer. My agriculture teacher was Matthew Fair, and he would get since we was in agriculture, he would get jobs for us to go out and work for different companies.
What kind of jobs?
Working in. We did some road work when they were building I-4. Yeah, when they were building I-4, my class, we went out and we moved stumps and loaded trucks when they were clearing the road to building one of the lanes in I-4. And that's how far back it is. It was a good ways back. And I was here when I-4 was built, so that takes it back. So we did all the jobs. And painting, I did painting. I started painting at what it used to be the Florida Military School out near the airport, and I started painting. Then I was in 63, 64. And that's where we started that.
So, what are your fond memories of childhood?
Fond memories, it's a mixture, because not having some things you just didn't have fond memories, but you do have certain memories. And memories of DeLand, and the gatherings in school. We would have, the football games and the activities at school were highlight. The pep rally was one of my favorite, because in pep rally we would get out early and we'd go in the gym and have our pep rally the night before the football game. So that was one, and it's just things that would and then the
you
parade.
You played football, right?
Yeah, I played football. I was a defensive end when I played football, and I got injured and I got hurt when I played football, and that's cut my college and my military. I was drafted, but I wasn't taken because of my football injury, and I was sent back home because of my football injury. and then they gave me any school to go to because they interrupted my job, and I said, "What? Okay." So I went to school. I said, pick out a school, and because I didn't go back to the job that I was at. I left DeLand and I went to Orlando.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school at Orlando. It was the Orlando Vocation. This is a technical school, and I studied as a surgical technician, and I picked that out. It seemed to be pretty good, and I studied all through the year, but I was working, and the teacher didn't want me to work while I was doing it, but I did well, so she didn't complain too much about that. So I studied as a surgical technician through the whole course, and got as far as the instrument mayo. That was the last part of the schooling. Nurses and doctors would know what the instrument mayo is. But that was the end course, and I dropped out, and she was so mad. But I said,
why did you drop out?
I couldn't do this all my life, being cooped up in a hospital. I couldn't see myself doing that all for the rest of my life. I'm more of I like to be out, and so I dropped out, and then eventually my wife at that time, she had a friend who was in the fire department, and he said, well, why don't you go try for the fire department? And I went and tried for the fire department. I studied for the test, and I took the test. And this is sort of a long story, but I can make it short. We took the test. During that time, I'm telling you about the racism, and I just, in telling it like it is, we were discriminated for as we were quoted. I'd say that the firefighting is one of the most stringent racial professions a black man could be in.
How so?
Well, when I took my test, I took the test at Orlando, and a group of us took the test there. I knew I passed the test. It told us we didn't pass the test. And because I studied for the test, we had the ARCO books, the red books that you study for the test. And you have different books you can buy like that. And they had one for the military and one for the fire department. And I studied that book. And it was only 10 questions on that even stumped me. I mean, so I knew I passed the test. I said it wasn't even everything I knew. So what it is, the long short, we came out and said we didn't pass. So what it is, they were quoting us and taking on so many blacks. And later on, it was found out that that someone blew the whistle on them and found out that that's what they were doing. And they had to come across the board and hire every one of those guys that took the test.
They did have to hire.
They had to hire them, or be litigation probably would have taken serious, because it was proof that they were quartering us, and we did pass the test. I knew I passed the test. I studied for it. I'm pretty good at tests. That's one thing in my lifetime. I've been good at taking state tests and stuff like that.
So then, where did you go to work?
Okay, I went to work at I didn't go in the fire department. I left DeLand. That's what happened. Well, I left DeLand and I went to Fort Lauderdale. I went into partnership with a friend of mine. He was in the church, and he had a painting company. So I went in partnership with him in Fort Lauderdale. So I lived in Fort Lauderdale for 3 years, and we went into partnership. And the time I was down there, things didn't go well for that partnership. So since I left DeLand, I didn't come back and claim my position with the other guys who were on the fire department. But in staying in Fort Lauderdale, I came back, and then I pursued the fire department again. And then that's when I went to Altamont Fire Department, and I tried to get on.
What was that like?
Altamont was the best, one of the best fire places. I was in 3 fire departments. I was in Altamont, Edenville, and I worked for the Disney Reedy Creek Company. I worked for them. But Altamont was one of the best fire departments I was at. When you figure all of them up,
You were the first black fireman there?
I was the first firefighter of color in Altamont. And I found out that later on they'd never had a black firefighter in Altamont. But I fit right in, and the guys, we just gel right together. And I have pictures showing the way we were together and doing different things. But I had a partner, they called him Fuzzy Dave, and we both had afros. He was a white brethren, but he was in mountain rescue from Huntsville, Alabama. So he had a little bit more experience in the medical than I did. But I was a medic before I was a firefighter. So during those days, the EMTs was just coming out into studying, and especially black EMTs. There wasn't too many. So I studied my EMT at Volusia Community College in Orlando, and I did my fire training at Seminole, and the other training was at the fire college in Ocala, the State Fire College.
So you were an EMT and a firefighter.
I was EMT firefighter. Nowadays, you have to be an EMT to get in there, and that's something that we have to do. And by being an EMT and telling it like it is, it kept the blacks sort of, because there was very few blacks that was able to pass.
I guess we should say what an EMT is.
EMT, emergency med technician. Emergency medical technician. It's the first level in pursuing the paramedic position. The paramedics were a little bit above. Paramedics were really they almost like a physician, but it's really they were first in line, so they did the primary to do that. But anyway, after I became a EMT, in Altamont, they sent me to fire school for the fire college, and I left the station, and they funded my way to go to do that, and I enjoyed it. The gentlemen, the guys were all right. We had no problem. During those days, the fire department and the police department was in the same little building. We had the same dispatcher. This was back in 74, 75. And right now you see it's a big, huge building in Altamont. And they couldn't believe we lived in such close quarters during that time.
You lived in close quarters, and yet you didn't experience any prejudice.
I experienced no prejudice at Altamont Spring. They were the best group of people. The chief was younger than we were. And to this day, he's the nicest person you want to meet. His name was Tom Siegfried. He was the chief. And then I met up with him a few years later in a training exercise at Reedy Creek. He came out to work with the training. He was still the same person. And everybody knew that, and he was the youngest chief in the state. So he had everybody was looking at him. But everything was really good there. I experienced no repercussions for the racial tension.
And what about the Disney experience?
Well, the Disney experience was quite an experience. It was a different animal altogether. The Disney was a racially, in putting this way, when I went there, I went to Eatonville for a couple of years, and then I was called to come to Disney because I put in for it, and I was called to come out to Disney, and so I went and took the position, and I left Eatonville to go out there.
Were you excited?
Yes, I was, because of where I was going to be going. Now, the story about me going to Reedy Creek, they had record of me coming from Altamont. They knew that Altamont never had any black firefighters. So when I got to Reedy Creek, they thought I was white, because Altamont never had a black firefighter. So they just assumed that I was a white brethren. So and then when I got there, they were tried to find all kind of reasons to not hire me. And believe it or not, one of the captains stepped in for me and spoke up for me
white captain.
Well, one of the white captains.
Because there were no blacks.
There were no blacks. He stepped in and spoke up for me. There was so, I'm going to tell you about racism. There's so many good people mixed up with the bad. I mean, it's just like today is the same thing. You have the police officers and this and that, but so many, superb good ones, but the bad ones are mixed up in there. So you can't throw out, the baby with the bad water. You can't do that. And so I know I lived through it. I lived 25 years at Reedy Creek under some of the most stringent prejudice that you can imagine. I suffered from PTSD when I left there. I had dreams about what the tension that I was going under after I left, and I've been gone for 14, 15 years, and I had dreams still about what I went through.
And the PTSD was not so much from the firefighting as from the tension?
It was more from the tension than from the firefighting.
And how did that manifest itself?
It manifested itself by me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what PTSD was until someone told me what it was. Because I did have a dream. I mean, so vivid that I was right there in my uniform, and then I wake up and I found out somebody said, "That's what you said." And I said, "What?" Okay. One of my former firefighters told me that's what it was, and then because firefighters, for the job itself, firefighting it takes a certain type of person to be a firefighter, because you go through so much, because mentally you have to condition your mind for the actual scene to really handle and deal with it, and you can't dwell on it, and then you go on. Things I've seen that some people would never see in the fire department. I've seen suicides, I've seen people run over, I've seen people almost decapitated. I've gone up into places in Edenville. There were two old elderly people, one of the oldest people in DeLand, in Edenville, and they were ran over. The guy came over drunk, ran over both of the old elderly people, and see, I was the first on the scene in that, and seeing that. I mean, they were elderly people. They would be walking by the gas station, and they hit this gas station, and they would come by the gas station, and this guy ran over there and just took the gas station out and ran over the two elderly people. They were in their 80s, upper 80s. They would always be walking together. I was there given accommodation for that because I was the first on the scene by the police chief there. Yeah, but so it's something that we have to really condition our mind to deal with, being a firefighter. And I had to deal with both. I had to deal with the racial and the actual scene, being on the scene and doing things. Firefighter is when you jump in the jump seat, is something you don't know what you're going to. You just have to just pray about it and go on, because when you put on the gear and put on everything and jump in there and mask and everything, it takes too much for me to explain what we have to go through. In our training, we train all the time. We train above ground rescue, below ground rescue. I was 100 feet up in the air rappelling. If you know what rappelling is, on a rope, we were rappelling 100, and then we had to do below ground rescue. Down, all the way down, nobody but you. And you have to do simulated rescue. So I loved it though, it was good, yeah.
So the racial tension, was that caused by the need to be part of a team and rely on people? It's teamwork, isn't it? Firefighting?
Yes, that part, when it came to that, it wasn't any, that didn't, but when you come to the part back to the station and actually living with them, the part when we were firefighters, we worked together. It's just like you being in the military. There's no division. You're gonna save this person. You're gonna be out there. You're gonna go together. You're gonna die together, live together. So the firefighting was like that. When you come back to the station, there's a different thing. When we sit down to eat and sleep and do it. Some guys in there, I slept right to my white brother, and he's an engineer, and I slept right next to him in the same bunk. We had double bunks called stalls, so it'd be two bunks per stall, and then we slept I slept right next to him for years. He was my engineer. He was a good person. He was different from the other guys. Some of them was different, some wasn't. Some of them it was suppressed, but you can tell it was there. So it was only two blacks when I went to Disney there, and one was a firefighter and one was an engineer. And they were the first blacks at Disney. And a matter of fact, when I went to Disney, I was the first medic of color to be hired at Disney World. They never had an EMT, a medic, a black medic at Disney World. I was the first black medic. And because of that, it was when you have that, it's an intimidation type, because I come there being an EMT already. So I was slated to go from an EMT to paramedic. And when you go to from EMT to paramedic, you're qualified to be an officer. So I was, and telling you like it is, I was 10 years at Disney before they put me on the ambulance. 10 years. Not 2 or 3 years, I was 10 years. I'm qualified ambulance driving attendant. And they wait 10 years before they would put me on the ambulance until I said something and mentioned, and they put me on the ambulance the next week.
You did?
Yeah.
You confronted them about it?
I drove 13, 14 years after that. No problem. Because, I drove ambulance in Altamont. I could have been a paramedic, but I didn't want to be a paramedic under those conditions, because you would be under scrutiny and be under the microscope for the whole time you're there. And that type of pressure, you don't need that with all the other pressures. So and then my wife was sick at the time, so I didn't need all that. So I refused to be. I took the test for paramedic. It's called what you call a paramedic pre-test, and I took the test, and I took it in Altamont Springs. That was when we were up there, because I was an EMT and some others was EMT. So they had to say, well, the test's coming up for us to take the pre-test so we can qualify for paramedics. So we had no paramedics at Altamont. So I was one of the senior people there to go, and I took the test. And just tell you like it is, I took the test, and they said, well, just go take the test and do the best you can, So I just went and took the pre-test. And
who told you to do the best you can?
The officers and my lieutenants and captains.
How did you feel when they said that?
I didn't think nothing of it, because I know I was going to do what I can. But when I went, let me tell you this, the surprising thing. And so, and when you would be surprised when I tell you this. I took the pre-test for paramedic, and it was about 4 or 5 of us that went from Altamont. And I was the only person that passed. The only person that passed the paramedic pre-test. The results came back on paper, and what the scores were. And when my records were sent to Reedy Creek, the scores and everything were blacked out. Everything was blacked out except mine, or what they did. But I was the only one that actually passed the paramedic pre-test in Altamont, out of all the other guys there.
So why do you think they did that?
Because it's embarrassing. It was embarrassment. You didn't want all of them, and I was the only one who passed. That's it's a rocket science thing. They worry about that because they didn't want that to be known that this black firefighter was the only one that passed the test, and all the other white brother ones there. I was good in what I did, and that was one of my in school. I was good at that and in sciences and stuff. So and another thing, when I did my EMT at Winter Springs, I did it at the church there. They taught our class. There was a lot of young people in there, young school kids, and I was the oldest person in that class. And it was a long, being EMT, it takes a while to study for that. And you go in details with this book about that thick, and I took the course, took the test, and making sure half the people didn't pass the test. I'm the only black in there. Half of them didn't pass. These are young people. They come in, they gone, they finished it. Most of them didn't even pass. I passed my test. I passed the test. Yeah, so.
I've heard many people of color who broke barriers, racial barriers in employment or academia, whatever, saying they had to be better than the best.
You have to be better than the best. But see, that's good for you because they make you better. And when you go to somewhere else, you're better than them. So I don't, because they make me good. They make me better than what I am. And so, and just like I've heard before, it's a lonely thing in being first and the only in anything. It's really lonely. And when you're there with all those guys and you're the only one there, you have no one to fend for you. And when this happened or that happened, you have the administration, and then you have the firefighters that are prejudiced. But when you have administrators that are like that, from the chief on down, and he was a typical. You can see that he was typical, and everybody knew that. And so a lot of them, it leaked down from that. But he eventually left. You know, he got older and left.
Was part of the tension the fear of messing up?
That was one of the prime things in bringing that up. There was a fear of messing up or doing that. I have a what you call a cheat sheet, a letter where they kept a track of every little thing I did, everything I did. They dated it and signed it. I have a copy of everything of it. It was from I was hired in '81, and I have a copy of every date from '81 to '97 of everything that I did.
You documented your own success.
No, I got the copy of it.
But you got the copy.
I have the copy.
So you had the proof.
I have the proof. Yeah, the records. So when they turn your records over, give you a record, they have to give you everything that's in that file. Everything's in that file. They have to give it if it's bad or not bad. The only thing I didn't get was that sheet with the pre-paramedic test. I didn't get that sheet showing them blanking out the names. That was embarrassing for Altamount. That I was the only one who passed the test, and they sent me not thinking that I was going to pass it. But it was easy for me. I was a science person, biology. I love science, biology, and stuff like that, anatomy, and that's why I went to be a surgical technician, because I was good in that area. Yeah.
Let's go back now to your earliest schooling in DeLand. Where did you attend?
Earliest schooling in DeLand, I went to school at the first grade in it was in '54. I was in the old building. Well, no, it was old. It was a new building. It was at Euclid High. Euclid High, and it was all one. It was elementary through 12th grade. It wasn't a K through 12, but we didn't have kindergarten time.
And that was an all-black school?
All-black school, and everything was segregated totally, and during those days everything was segregated. It was tightly segregated, and we went through some things that as young people we survived through things that if we had the chance we would have made better than what we did. A lot of young people would have done better if they had the opportunity and chance and were given that chance. You had some students that were naturally bright and they succeeded. You know, my valedictorian and salutatorian, they succeeded. The funeral home director was in my class. He graduated, and then the other young lady was valedictorian. She went to Atlanta. She worked for the Coca-Cola company, and all of us met in our last class reunion, our 50-year. I had our 50-year reunion, and all of us together.
What subjects did you take in high school that you liked?
A subject that I liked, as I stated before, the biology, the sciences. I was a science person, and because physical science, and biology and anatomy, those things I was interested in, and that's why I did good on the paramedic, because most of it was anatomy type things, and I knew the human body and stuff. We studied that. But I like that, and we had other subjects. We had shop. We had which was called at that time. They call shop today, but in our days it was industrial arts. And I loved industrial arts because we did everything in industrial arts. We did leather work, we did pottery, we did woodwork, and all of those things. We did, carpentry, all the things. You learn how to measure and things. Kids don't have that today. They don't even know how to measure a ruler. They don't know what a quarter inch is. They don't know what this tool is or that tool. And I have a burden for our young people in doing that. But the sciences, the industrial arts, and agriculture, that was one of my favorite subjects. I was during those times. Let me tell you, there's a racial tone to that also. There's so many things that we can touch on. Now, during that time, it was the Future Farmers of America, which was a FFA, and then the NFA, which was the New Farmers of America. And you know the difference. You have Future Farmers of America, and you have New Farmers of America. Okay, the Future Farmers of America, FFA, were the white brethren. They were the Future Farmers of America. The New Farmers of America, you might wonder what that N stands for. But the New Farmers of America were the people who were the black group of people. And they were new farmers. And how can we be new farmers? But the distinguish between the Future Farmers and the New Farmers of America, they would have that. And another thing, surprising thing, we had different jackets. The Future Farmers of America had royal blue jackets with the big emblem on it, the FFA Future Farmers emblem on it. We have a national emblem that's on the back, and then they had blue jackets. And the New Farmers of America, we had black jackets. And I always realized later, they were black jackets, just as black as, and then they had the emblem on it too. And so eventually, it was done away with the division between the New and Future Farmers of America. But see, we had to grow up in that type of, so the racial division was through all our lives, even to today. I can. Yeah.
Now, if the Future Farmers of America would, when I was growing up, they would have exhibits at the county fair. Did the New Farmers of America participate?
I don't ever remember us doing that, having an exhibit, because we didn't have, and we wasn't included in stuff like that. We didn't have, our teacher, Matthew Fair, he was our teacher, and he was, and we would do different things, but we didn't have anything like exhibits of being able to do it. The Future Farmers, they had places where they had, I live 2 blocks from the Future Farmers of America, from the lab. I live 2 blocks from the lab, and I had access to all of that. We didn't have access to all of that, the tractors and all of the equipment. And then we would get a thing. We got a new truck. Was the only thing we ever got. It was a new truck that we got, brand new truck.
And what about in high school? Did you have used books from the white school?
Well, that was a common issue. All the way back to my grades from the beginning, we always had used books from the school, and we were too young to realize that until later on, but it was. But the used books came from the other school, which DeLand High, and then we would have to go and secure them, so they would bring them over. Not only used books, used desks, used furniture, everything that from the school was. We got the hand-me-downs for everything in the school. So we got the education. We didn't get the newer books. So the newer books would have different things in it that we would need to do. So we were behind in all those areas. So That's the way. That's what it was like that. It was bad.
Even after Brown versus Board of Education in 1955, I believe it was, when things were separate but equal was not equal.
That had nothing to do with that. That was just a.
That didn't affect you?
No, it did. It was still the same. It was still the same because people in different counties, they did what they wanted to do, and it continued that way throughout school. And we didn't have now the school. Eventually, the school changed, and we had Stark Elementary, which was a spinoff from the elementary school at Euclid, and it had Stark Elementary, so that was the second school. And then that was like a middle type ground. And then we went to, it's still elementary. Then we went from Stark Elementary to Southwestern Jr Sr High. That's when they did away with, they didn't do away with, they transferred Euclid High to Southwestern Jr Sr High. The name Euclid was gone. That's the hurting part about my school days. The school was dismantled. It's not like that just in DeLand. It's like that over the country. All of the not only the black schools, a lot of things that the black, they erased any knowledge or history of that. And you go back to World War II, I can tell you things that were in stories about that too. And the bases, the base where the blacks were occupied, that particular base, the history of that base was eliminated. And a lot of things, and then they eliminated all of the black schools in our area. I know all over the country. But if it was established the smaller areas, like in the South, small schools, and they didn't have a lot of opposition, they eliminated the school. My Euclid High School was gone. And I had my grandson. If he asked me, where did you go to school at, I couldn't tell him. Sure, our memorabilia, our trophies, and no history about where we went to school, the basketball tournaments we won, and the football. We had a case full of trophies at school. When the school was dismantled, all of those things, artifacts, we don't know what happened to them. And I think it was an injustice for them to do that. We had no say-so over it. And no one would
sounds as if they destroyed part of your identity.
The identity was gone. The identity for my education and where we came from, and the blacks, and that was done because they don't want any history of that. And some of it is good history. I can tell you a whole lot of things that are good history. They don't want you to know about those things. And then we can go on for the rest of the day, and I can tell you things about what I've experienced, not what I know. Some things that I've experienced at my age. That I've experienced a lot of things like that. But think about it, you learn to survive in that, being a black person of color, and everything. By being the first in things, it's lonely and it's hard. And it's hurting for you, but what you have to do is shore up. You have to shore up and go on. Pray about it and move on. And if it wasn't for my religious background, a lot of things I wouldn't do and wouldn't be. But right now, because I just pray about it and go on. But I've been blessed through those things. I was blessed in the fire department, but going through what I did for 25 years, I worked at Reedy Creek. And a lot of things I did out there. One thing I did at Reedy Creek was, and this is a touchy situation that I did for the Disney company. Did this to me. I designed the EMT state patch that you see on the shoulders of all. I designed that. My lieutenant came to me one day and asked me if I would. They were asking people to do design. He begged me to do it. He said, will you please? Because he knew I was in graphics. I had just finished a graphic design for Desert Storm during that time. And I finished that design, and I made a button out of it. And it was an eagle, and it had the Scud missile in one hand, and then it was something else in the other, and on the court claws. And he said, well, will you do a thing on the EMT patch. And so I said, well, he kept asking me and begging me. He said, please, will you do? He said, my lieutenant, Chuck Hughes. Chuck Hughes is my lieutenant. I mentioned his name. Chuck Hughes, he asked me to do that. And then, but after it was done, it was 2 years before I realized when the patch came out, I saw it. I said, it looks familiar. And I said, well, let me go, because I keep everything, because I made copies of it. I did the design, and I did it in color.
Did you get paid?
I'm getting to that point. Okay, I didn't get paid anything. I didn't get recognized for anything, but I didn't want to get paid for that. Only thing is, I just wanted to be recognized that I did it. But they took that from me and claimed it. They after 2 years, it was smoothed in as if someone had did it. But I knew I did it. But let me tell you what happened. Before, when I found out and I discovered that patch looked familiar, when they came out with a new EMT patch, and it was the old one was a real small one, and this one was a bigger one, And I designed all of it, colored it, put the picture and everything, and I submitted it to him, my lieutenant. And 2 years later, he came up and I saw the patch on it. I said, it looked familiar. I went back to my locker, and I said, I know I have the proofs and copies of what I did when I did this drawing, because I wasn't throwing it away. And I went back to my locker and I couldn't find it. It was gone. They, during that time, drugs and stuff was in. They said, well, you can't have your own lock on your locker no more. So we had to take all our lockers off our lockers. That way they could get in your locker. They got in my locker and took all my papers out. Stole my, and after that, we can put any kind of lock we wanted. After that, I knew that's what it was. My material was stolen, so I wouldn't be able to prove that I did. And to this day, I can't do it because I didn't bring any of those things home with me. I kept them all in my locker. That was at work. But I had a thing full of drawings of the EMT patch. Now, I did 99% of the patch. Only thing they had to do is stick an emblem, the paramedic emblem, the medic with the cross and the snake, stick that in the middle of it, that's all. They didn't have to do anything but put it in the middle, and that's all. Everything was identical to what I drew on the graphics. I mean, you can take a photo and look at it, and they didn't have to draw anything at all, just,
Sounds like it still bothers you.
It bothers me to the most. You realize how much that bothers me. And I was wondering if I should go litigation on it. But see, you have certain clauses that end when you work certain places. I met, and you don't really believe this, I met in a parking lot. I met a gentleman who had the exact same situation. And this is the truth, but I don't think this guy would be telling me this. I met him in the parking lot. And do you know, this gentleman drew this emblem. He wasn't from around, he was out of state. But he said, I never got credit for it. And
Which emblem was that?
You know what that was? The Dodge Ram. He drew the Dodge Ram emblem. He said, I'm the one who drew. I never got credit from the company, and they wouldn't give me credit. He actually drew, you see the Ram emblem and everything? He said, I drew that. And we met in the Home Depot parking lot, and I told him about mine, he told me about his. So if he ever able to see this video, I would like to see him again, because we have something in common, because it hurt him that they did that, and the emblem is over. This all you see. The Dodge emblem is the Ram. That's what you see. But anyway, that bothered me quite a bit doing that. And that's just a few things that we as a black group of people have to go in this areas.
You mentioned that one of your heroes was Charles Bailey.
Charles Bailey.
Go ahead and tell us about Charles Bailey.
Okay, Charles Bailey. Well, I start with my number one hero was my dad. That's my number one hero. My dad was a clever person. He didn't have, he went further about the 8th grade or something like that, but my dad was clever, he was smart. And he would by his job and different things, and I can tell you some things that he did that you see today. But he was my hero, man. And the next hero was my agriculture teacher, was Matthew Fair. He taught the students, we were agriculture students, young men. He taught them how to treat the young ladies, how to do this, how to speak, and how to, just politeness and, your diction, just your basic, And he taught us these things, and if it wasn't because I didn't have a dad, and so if it wasn't for him, I contributed him to a lot of what I did. And the next, a few years later, Lieutenant Charles Bailey. Charles Bailey was one of the funeral directors here. Arthur J. Mack had a funeral home, and Charles Bailey had one. Now, Arthur J. Mack was the premier funeral home director who got all about it. Charles Bailey would get about every once in a while. He would, he had a smaller funeral home. But I knew him all my life. I was a little boy, and I knew him all my life. I went away and came back, and I saw him on TV, and I never realized. No, I didn't see him on TV. I just came by and just to meet him and talk with him. But I never knew that he was a Tuskegee Airman until I went by his house. And when I was just visiting DeLand, just went by there and see how he was doing. And he told me everything. He explained it as if it was yesterday. And I mean, the row. And after that, I went online and pulled up him and all the other, some of the other Tuskegee Airmen. But he showed me his flying cross. A certain number of flying cross was given out, and he got one of them, because he was in the first wave of people he was at Bethune-Cookman College, and a lot of people going different places. He said, "Well, I'm gonna go fly a plane," and he went to Tuskegee, and that's where he was. But he was a true hero of mine, because I read those guys. They were the true Top Guns. Yeah, people now talking about Top. Those guys, true. They didn't have the technical stuff in planes and stuff. I've sat in the plane and stuff, and it's this close. You can move this and this and this, and the joystick, and that's all you can move. And so they flew by the seat of their pants, and they knew the plane became a part of their body. You had to be the maneuvers that they did, and flying and stuff like that.
About how old was he when you and he befriended each other?
Okay, he was up in 80s, like he was close to 80s. So he was up there. And then after that, Alzheimer's hit him right then after I met him. And then he passed after that. But right after I did that, he told me before the movie came out, Tuskegee Airmen, the movie came out, he told me, he said they came by and interviewed him. I have the original interview on tape when they interviewed him before he passed. I have the original tape with him before he passed, and the tape is showing him when he was in the military, and interviewed him then. And his interview was by Ronald Reagan, was the narrator of something of our wings. That's the something about our wings. And I have the original tape I got from the TV station, and it was 4 people in Central Florida that were Tuskegee Airmen. He was one in Orlando, one in Winter Springs, and one in Titusville. These guys all flew as Tuskegee Airmen, and they interviewed all of them. I have all of them on tape, on the tape. But he was really one of my true heroes.
What inventions do you think were outstanding? You mentioned technology.
Yeah.
What inventions were outstanding when you were a kid and made a difference in your life?
Well, as everybody knows, the TV was one of the main things, because the TV was, it broke the boredom, the things that we around the house, but it gave us something. That was one of the most impressive as growing up, the television when it came up. We used to go to the neighbor's house to look at the TV. we would sit on the floor, and we have certain times that we go over there and look at TV. until a certain time we come home, and then we that was one, and then it's just there are other things, but that was the most striking thing when the television and the TV came out. It broke.
Let's talk a minute briefly about downtown DeLand and compare it. You mentioned that you did go shopping in downtown DeLand. You mentioned a grocery store. Tell us about that.
Okay, during the racial tension, they had walk-ins, and one of the walk-ins was, you remember, the Woodworths and all those stores, they had sit-ins. And one of the sit-ins was at Woodworth, and that was downtown DeLand. And I remember that, and there was a lot of tension during that time, and people were, they're getting ready to go down.
Did you see it?
I didn't actually see it because we really didn't go downtown during those times too much. We really didn't go down. We went downtown for the parade. We really didn't actually go downtown because it's something place that we had our own downtown. There's a black downtown in DeLand. Historically, most of it's gone now, but there was an area that was a black downtown, and we had the theater, we had pool hall, we had barber shop, and it was on this particular strip, not too far from the existing downtown. It was really about 2 blocks from downtown. This street was down, it was down there. So, but anyway, the sit-in was done when the racial tension, and that was something that was exciting at that time. One person is living, she's still living now. That attendant was in that sit-in. She's much older. She's probably in her mid 80s now. So, but she was one of the young people that was instigated in going down there. Let's go down and do that.
You mentioned in our pre-interview the Kirkland grocery store, where black families did a lot of business. Tell us about Mr. Kirkland.
Yeah, Mr. Kirkland was I just say he was a good person, and he supplied the black community, and we had 2 grocery stores. It was Mose Harris, and then Kirkland. Mose Harris was closer to the black community. He was a black store, and then Kirkland was a little bit further down, closer to downtown. Black people shopped there. My mother shopped there. He gave my mother credit, because my mom, just raising us, and she had to buy stuff, and he would give her, and she would go and get what she wanted to get, and pay her when she can pay him, and that was good for the community, and he knew that too. I mean, that's business, So he wanted to go and do that. He didn't want to cause anything, but he was good to being who he was, and like you say, there's good with bad. It's always a mixture, and he did that, and it was a help for the community. And
what stands out as your most memorable experience or the best time of your life?
The best time of my life? Oh, they say your school days are your best days. I guess I can say my school days were good, and going on different things, doing things with the school. The sports was a highlight. We have that. We have the homecoming parade was a high point in my schooling. So that was a good point there. So.
What would you say to a young person today? What kind of advice would you give them about life?
Well, I would tell a young person, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. That's what I would impress the young person. There's so many young people not honoring, don't recognize their mom and dad. They say things, you'd be surprised. And I say, you do that, and your days will be long upon the land. That's scriptural. And I would do that because so many people, but a lot of young people are not. They don't think that because they've never been taught that. Some of them never taught that because some of them parents wasn't taught that. So it's hard for them to identify with doing that or saying that if they're not taught. It comes down the line, and there's a reflection of their parents and from them, And it's a perpetual thing. It goes down the line, so you have to work with that.
Well, religion played an important part in your family's life, right?
Religion, if it wasn't for religion, I would be a different person I am now. Religion was our part. When you have, it's hard to say, some people not, when you have a hardship thing, it pulls you closer to God, pulls to the religion. It shouldn't be, but it makes you more humble. A humble spirit is the most, because Christ accepts humbleness more so than anything. And the arrogance is something that he doesn't like. Because so many people are so arrogant today and not humble. And even from our government on down, there's no humbleness there. And the spirituality just seems to be dwindling away. But the spiritual part of my life is based, we came up in the church. I was 14, 15 years old when I got baptized, my sister and I. And we stuck to the church all to this day. My sister, she's in her early 70s, and she's been at the same church for all those years. Never left. She's been at the same church 60 years.
How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered for not I, but Christ. I don't want to be claiming myself as anything, and as a kind person, as a generous person, and I always want the best for everyone, and I try to pray to that end, and as a humanitarian, which I would like to do more. Now I would like to think about the young people. I would like to start something so that they will have something to lean on. Do you have no close Votech schools or stuff like that? A lot of people are not geared for academic. And when our young people, they're on the street corners and stuff like that, these young people are bright, brilliant people. I know I've met some of them. They're smart. The only thing is they need direction and a place to go and somebody to direct them there. So if I was able to start an organization that would be able to direct our young people, not of color, any young person, because I'm not respect of color. It's a person. I'm not respect of person or color, and I deal with everybody. I have friends from all over, and everything. So that's what I would like. I would like to do that eventually, and it's something that I will have to work with. But if I had the investors, I know I have the mechanics and the knowledge to put it together, and I get the people and put it together, and having something, a school in the area, and I have a facility that I'd probably be able to get to start this. But if I just had the financial backing to do this, it would save a lot of young people, not only in DeLand. It could be a template for young people all over other cities, all over the country. It's the same thing. It's the same thing what I'm talking about now is duplicated all over the country. In certain areas, of black areas and things like that, they've gone through the same thing I'm going through. They can mirror what I'm telling you now. Yeah, so it's something that I really would like to be remembered as, if it's something. In other words, I want to say that my living is not being in vain. So you ask, well, what are you putting it for? So I want to be, and some people go, they come and go, and their life is nothing is, here to show for what they did or what they contributed to. I like to contribute something before I go.
Thank you.